There are occasions when we encounter people whose presence leaves us disturbed, not by words spoken or aggressive attitudes, but by a subtle, almost invisible sensation that permeates the body and resonates intimately in the heart. It is as if an imperceptible cloak of falseness hovers over an apparent smile of cordiality, suggesting that something impossible to name is happening behind this carefully maintained mask of perfection. Carl Jung, one of the great thinkers of the human unconscious, dedicated his life to studying phenomena like this. In his clinical practice, he perceived a worrying pattern. Individuals who, on the outside, appeared to be examples of virtue, but who internally hid deep and dangerous aspects that they refused to admit. For Jung, the real risk lies less in acknowledged evil and more in that which is repressed and denied. The danger is not in open wickedness, but in the shadow that hides under an excessively virtuous facade. Analytical psychology shows that the greatest threat is not facing imperfect people, but those who truly believe in their own innocence, projecting everything they don't want to see in themselves onto others while hiding under an impeccable persona. In this video, we will unveil the deep and disturbing signs that Jung identified in the human soul. Analyze this phrase: the body always knows first. There are experiences that escape logical reasoning. How many times have you encountered someone who expressed themselves with kind words, maintained a polite posture, but internally something in you recoiled? A subtle shiver, a discomfort in the shoulders, an almost imperceptible anxiety. The body seems to warn, careful. But where does this sensation come from? Jung invites us to respect this first alert, the instinctive premonition that there is something wrong behind an overly perfect posture. Although he was not a mystic in the common sense, Jung deeply valued unconscious wisdom. For him, the unconscious was more than a repository of memories or repressed desires. It was an active intelligence capable of perceiving misalignments that escape conscious logic. The unconscious perceives with greater clarity than the rational mind allows. That unexpected discomfort is not the result of paranoia, but of intuition that detects a difference between what the person demonstrates and what they really feel. Human beings can simulate almost anything except authentic harmony between feeling and expression. Our body identifies this lack of congruence. Modern science, especially through studies on mirror neurons, confirms that even without consciously perceiving, we are constantly reading nuances of others' expressions, tones of voice, and gestures. If there is a mismatch, a smile without truth reflected in the eyes, for example, our internal system enters immediate alert. Various ancestral traditions already recognize these subtle nuances. In Zen Buddhism, there is talk of the face before birth, a metaphor for genuineness that transcends social masks. In Sufism, there is the concept of the veil of light, the pure surface that hides great internal contradictions. Jung modernized this millennial language for contemporary psychology. In the end, this first discomfort speaks not only about the other, but about our own sensitivity to detecting falsehoods. When we ignore this internal alert in the name of politeness, reason, or doubt, we put ourselves in real danger. Often danger does not arise obviously, but presents itself in polite gestures, well-crafted phrases, and a disturbing gleam in the eyes. Imagine yourself in a situation where someone begins to attribute intentions and feelings to you that do not correspond to your reality. You are accused of selfishness for simply taking a position, or of coldness when you merely set a healthy boundary. Suddenly, it seems you represent something you are not, but of which this person is absolutely certain. Jung named this phenomenon shadow projection, one of the most dangerous mechanisms of the human unconscious. The shadow is everything we do not recognize in ourselves. All rejected impulses, emotions, and aspects are pushed into the unconscious, where they do not disappear but gain strength and autonomy. When we do not see our own shadow, we begin to see it clearly in others. The person who projects is not aware of their distortion. They really believe the defect is in the other. And it is this unshakable conviction that makes this mechanism so dangerous. The more unconscious the process, the more real and true it seems to the projector. This phenomenon triggers true social distortions. The aggressor feels like a victim. The intolerant believes they are acting morally, and the controller feels protective. The person who is the target of the projection may find themselves trapped in an incomprehensible web, being accused of things without foundation in reality, completely defenseless against accusations without logical basis. It is like fighting ghosts. You cannot defend yourself against what you did not do, did not think, or are not. Spiritually, this phenomenon has been recognized for millennia. In Christianity, there exists the metaphor of the speck in another's eye and the beam in one's own. In Buddhism, the image of the cloudy mirror that deforms internal perception and reflects these distortions in the external world. Jung translated these ancestral symbols into modern therapeutic language. Another aggravating factor is that the shadow is not limited to projection onto individuals. It can be projected onto entire groups, ideas, or institutions. From this arise fanaticisms, moral lynchings, and hasty judgments. The only real defense is not in direct confrontation, but in the courage to recognize one's own shadow. Perhaps the most insidious sign is the unrestricted self-conviction of doing good. Jung identified a phenomenon he called psychic inflation. When the ego merges with archetypal images of grandeur like savior or master and begins to act as if transmitting absolute truths, no longer personal opinions. Unlike superficial narcissism, ego inflation is much more subtle and easily deceives both the person themselves and those around them. The spiritually inflated person does not boast of being better. They claim to act in the name of a higher purpose, as if they were the bearer of a divine mission. Therefore, they often have a charismatic and inspiring aura, transmitting a false sense of security in an uncertain world. But it is a dangerous type of confidence because it is born from an identification with grandiose ideas without the inner structure to integrate them in a healthy way. In this mental state, criticisms are not perceived as divergent opinions, but as direct attacks on what the person believes they represent. Others cease to be interlocutors and become potential enemies of the truth being defended. The mask of perfection also reveals much. Consider a person who always knows exactly what to say, who acts irreproachably, who never enters into conflict and seems impeccable in all situations. Initially, it may sound admirable, but over time, this posture exudes artificiality and lack of human warmth. Jung called this persona, the social mask we wear to adjust ourselves to the world. We all need functional personas, but when someone completely confuses themselves with this mask, they lose contact with their own true self, transforming into an artificial character who displays perfection while repressing an entire universe of conflicts and authentic feelings. Jung warned clearly, the more rigid the persona, the more disordered the repressed shadow will be. The constant effort to sustain the image costs a high psychic price, and what is systematically denied eventually returns in destructive and unexpected forms. What do you think of this content so far? Tell me in the comments what we can improve. For those who want to delve even deeper into this inner exploration, consider acquiring my ebook, Revealing the Shadow. Carl Jung, Guidance for Facing Internal Conflict. This guide offers not only understanding but also practical strategies to embrace all parts of yourself. By acquiring this guide, you will take a courageous step toward one of the deepest and most revolutionary aspects of human psychology, the encounter with your own shadow. The ebook link is pinned in the first comment. And remember, this journey is just the beginning. Continue exploring your shadows to discover the light they can reveal. Despite all these dark warnings, shadow projection, ego inflation, archetypal possession, Jung proposed a path of hope and transformation, integrating the shadow. This revolutionary process consists of abandoning the illusion of absolute purity, beginning to recognize oneself integrally, with lights and shadows in dynamic balance. Jung's famous phrase, "I would rather be whole than good," does not mean defending immorality or the absence of ethics, but rather practicing radical honesty with oneself. Integrating the shadow is not denying genuine goodness, but ceasing to systematically repress that which makes us profoundly human. By consciously admitting that we feel anger, envy, pride, and other impulses considered negative, we are able to exercise true choice over our attitudes and behaviors. As Jung said, "What is unconscious governs us completely. What becomes conscious we can transform and direct." Spiritual teachings from various ancient cultures reinforce this path of integration. Tibetan Buddhism recommends converting poison into medicine. The alchemical tradition speaks of transforming lead, shadow, into gold, consciousness. Contemporary neuroscience shows that integrating traumas and repressed emotions creates new brain connections, resulting in significant gains in self-awareness, empathy, and emotional balance. Ignoring these shadow parts of our psyche does not make them magically disappear. On the contrary, they can emerge in distorted and dangerous forms, both for us and for those around us. Constant repression generates unexpected explosions, destructive projections, and a psychic rigidity that impoverishes human experience. True spiritual and psychological maturity is not in judging oneself evolved or morally superior, but in accepting oneself as someone in eternal process of growth and self-discovery. People who have managed to integrate their shadows radiate a unique combination of humility allied with inner firmness, natural authority without authoritarianism, compassion without naivety. These people do not boast about their perfection or spiritual evolution, but transmit a palpable integrity that inspires genuine trust. They recognize their internal conflicts and limitations, but are not dominated or paralyzed by them. More importantly, they do not feel a compulsive need to convince anyone about their goodness or correctness, because they are truly reconciled with their own human complexity. They can be firm when necessary without becoming cruel. They are gentle without being permissive. They demonstrate strength without oppressing and show vulnerability without victimizing themselves. This is the trademark of those who have made peace with their shadow. A presence that transmits real security, not the false security of the inflated persona. This is the definitive antidote to the type of person Jung saw as most dangerous to society. Not one who errs and recognizes their errors, but one who never admits to erring, who sees themselves as morally superior and systematically projects their failures onto others. Shadow integration is the true path of liberation of the human soul. It is the process where the artificial character dies so that the whole, authentic, and truly compassionate being can be born. It is not a final destination, but a continuous process of self-knowledge and growth. After this entire journey through the labyrinths of the human psyche, perhaps the true reflection is not about identifying these characteristics in others, but about having the courage to recognize them within oneself. How many of these shadows have you already perceived in people around you, and more importantly, how many have you had the humility to recognize in your own heart? Tell me in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and share the video with friends who appreciate this type of content. See you in the next video.